sorry, Dalet on the base. But
I didn't understand what you said at the end with
was it the punchline of that story?
with the no, with the Kriya Shema. What time you're
So I'll review that. I'll review that. Okay, good. And so we're on the base of on the base of the Dalet. But yeah, don't forget to get those Simon down for base and Gimel. So God. So yeah. So what do we say? The recorder on. Start the tape rolling. Okay. So yesterday we were on Dalet and Aleph. We had two topics we discussed. The first was just finishing up with David Melech, and we asked how we could reconcile the fact that Kolon Saf Chassid in one pasuk, and then later on he said Lule with like two dots over it. Obviously he didn't say two dots, but the understanding is when he said if I didn't believe Lule Hamanti, if I didn't believe that I would get to Olam Haba, then I would have not been able to endure what I had to endure with my enemies. But the tradition is that when he said Lule, if I didn't believe, it has dots over it, which indicate that he wasn't exactly so convinced he was going to make it to Olam Haba. So, if David Melech on the one hand was not even sure he's making it to Olam Haba, how could he be so convinced he's a chassid? That was our question. And the Gemorah answers, no, David was convinced he was a chassid at the time he said it, but that doesn't mean he couldn't lose it, because Shema Yigrom Achet, a person can do a sin and lose what he had built up for himself. And then the Gemorah had two illustrations that illustrated the point, that confirmed the point of Shema Yigrom Achet. One with Yaakov Avinu having been promised by Hashem he'd be with him wherever he went, and then nevertheless Yaakov was afraid when his encounter with Esav that maybe something bad would happen. We asked, what was Yaakov afraid of? Hashem promised he'd protect him. The answer was, but maybe Shema Yigrom Achet, maybe Yaakov would do something wrong that would then jeopardize that commitment from Hashem. We discussed about the difference between a Navi getting a prophecy which can't become bad, and a personal commitment that Hashem would make, which wouldn't be relevant to. We said the reason the Navi's positive prophecies are supposed to come true is so that we can have some yardstick by which to test him, which wouldn't apply to a private message from Hashem. Therefore, Hashem Yigrom Achet, just because Hashem promised Yaakov, implicit in that promise is if you keep your half of the bargain, and if you don't, well then I'm not going to keep my half of the bargain. There's no necessity for Hashem to continue to make sure that good things happen just because Yaakov knew that Hashem spoke to him. He didn't need a reaffirmation that he was truly a prophet, that something bad couldn't happen. And the second illustration we had was on a national level, which was Darshma Pasuk, that it says that the Pasuk from Az Yashir, that the two Biyas, the two entries to Eretz Yisrael, that the Pasuk references, both are referencing the first and the second arrival in Eretz Yisrael, one's the time of Joshua, one's the time of Ezra, and the same way Joshua's time was miraculous with a lot of fanfare and miracles, so too it should have been with like our heads held high and pride and openness of Hashem being with us, as it should have been by Sheni, but no, it wasn't like that because of the Chatam they did during Bais Rishon time. Therefore, when we came back the second time, it was pretty pathetic, frankly. 40,000 people came with Ezra, and we had to, get the thumbs up from the Persian king Koresh and so on. It wasn't comparable because of Garam Achet, the sins that we had done made it that we didn't deserve the good things that would happen to us, despite the fact that it was prophecy that we would get good things in the Az Yashir.
The sins when?
Sorry?
The sins that we had done when?
During the time of Bais Rishon. Exactly what we did wrong is a discussion, but whatever we did wrong, we did wrong. So that was that topic, and then that was sort of the end. David Melech came to an end, and then there was the two dots, and big two dots, which we went back to discussing the Mishnah. And the Mishnah was focused on the Rabbanan Shita. We asked, not on the board anymore, but we asked whose side are they on? Are they like Rabbi Eliezer, that you have the first third of the night? Because, that's how I'm putting it. Are they like Rabbi Eliezer, that B'shach B'cha means when you go to bed at night? Or are they with the Rabbi Gamliel, that it means B'shach B'cha while you're in bed at night? And either way, what's this? Their sheet that was the third sheet of you have till midnight. And we said, we're asked, whose side are they on? If they agree with the interpretation of Eliezer, that when you go to bed, it should be the first third of the night, and they let them say that. And if they hold that it means the whole night, that while you're in bed, let's say like Rabeinu Yonah, what's this middle of the road sheet of midnight? And they answered, oh, well, that was because the rabbis really agree with Rabeinu Yonah the whole night, but they wanted to keep people from doing sins, and therefore they put a midnight cutoff to them, so you shouldn't accidentally overstep the boundary and miss your opportunity. You asked actually, how do we reconcile that with the fact that we so explicit in the Mishnah? Like, why did the Mishnah ask the question when the Mishnah spoke it out? So I suggested my answer, which was just because Rabbi Gamliel says it doesn't mean it's in the Mishnah. It doesn't mean that it was pasha, that it was true that the Chacham agreed with him. There is a Yerushalmi that suggests, by the way, that the Chachamim agreed with Rabbi Eliezer. It's a discussion, and they just were arguing over what time bedtime was until midnight, until the first third of the night. So that was another. Either way, when the dust settles, the Gemorah says you have until Chatzos Midrabanan, and past that, the Gemorah said you've now gone over an Isser, because they were afraid people would think they have too much time on their hands, and therefore end up missing the time of Kriya Shema. Then the Gemorah segued to a brayso, which we left off with this brayso, which is a little involved. The brayso said, I'll stay out there first, and I'm going to look inside, and we'll pick up and move on from there. The brayso said the rabbis, the rabbis made a siyag for their words, and that's a contentious issue. What words are we talking about? Because it says, read inside, I guess. We'll pick up there. We're not going to do it all from scratch, but I want to pick up because we didn't exhaust the point here. And the brayso we're in the middle of actually. So it's on line 4 of Daf Daled on the base. Tanya, like it says in a brayso, Chacham asu siyag l'divreihem. The rabbis made a protective fence for their words. And again, we have to ask ourselves, which words are we talking about? Because Kriya Shema is a doraisa, not a derabanan. So it can't be a siyag to protect Kriya Shema. It has to be something else. In any case, Kadesh lo yeh adam b'am b'nesadim, so a person shouldn't come home from the field, the erev in the evening, v'omer eilech lebeisi, I'll go home, v'ochel kima, I'll have a little snack. Literally means ochel kima, a little bit. I've heard this, by the way, this is a good, even if your Hebrew isn't all it could be, this phrase, ochel kima, or ve'eshte kima, like I've heard it referenced in different drashas and stuff. It's like sort of part of the basic Talmudic literacy. So this is like a famous brayso. Such a thing. In any case, so a person will say, Ochel kimal, eat a bit, ve'eshte kimal, drink a bit, ve'ishin kimal, take a little nap, ve'achar kach, and after I've done that, ekra Kriya Shema v'espal, I will say Kriya Shema and I will daven. The problem is, v'chotav toshena, you know what's going to happen. Sleep will grab a hold of him, v'nimsa yashin kol halayla, he sleeps the whole night long and misses Kriya Shema. Aval, rather what a person should do, says the brayso, that continues on, a person should come home from work at night, be'erev, nichnas the basic knesses, go straight to shul. If he knows how to learn psukim, he should learn chumash, whatever. Nach, v'im raga lishnos, if he actually is capable of learning mishnayos, shona, let him learn his mishnayos. Again, it's bal peh, right? V'kor Kriya Shema, and then he'll say Kriya Shema, u'mispal, he'll pray. Then v'ochel pita muvarach, he'll eat his dinner, his bread, and he will muvarach, he'll say berachas mazon. V'cholok over al divrei chachamim, anybody who transgresses the words of the rabbis, again, we'll have to figure out what words we're talking about. But the words of the rabbis, chayav misa, he is liable, like he deserves to die. End of brayso. So, I spoke out here that it's not exactly clear what this siyag to the Devarim is talking about. Could be that we're talking about, it seems like we're talking about two different derabanan. There's derabanan number 1, say Kriya Shema at midnight, derabanan, which is, we already established, and derabanan number 2, here we're saying, not only that, but you should come home straight from, don't wait till midnight even, you should come home straight from work and go straight to shul and say Kriya Shema then. It's still not clear in the Mefarshim, 2 basic approaches. Either is the focal point, like you must say Kriya Shema right away, like first thing first, or is it just that you can't eat or sleep before saying Kriya Shema? 2 different approaches. It's like a machlokus in the Mefarshim. So the way the halacha comes out is like the latter, meaning like Rav and Rabeinu Yonah, that there's an isser of eating a meal before you say Kriya Shema. But there's only a l'chachila, the Shulchan Aruch says l'chachila, ideally you should say Kriya Shema right away, but if you didn't, that's okay, just you can't have a suda before you can't eat before you say Kriya Shema.
Even in summertime when it's really late?
All the more so because Kriya Shema time hasn't kicked in. Right?
No.
And we're actually going to say half an hour before Kriya Shema time kicks in.
No,
So let's say, for argument's sake, Kriya Shema, let's say it says 8:30. So from 8 o'clock, you no longer can be ochel kima anymore. You can't be eating your kima, but you could say eat dinner at 7:30, for argument's sake.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's
Eat
what
earlier.
the window is half an hour before the time kicks in.
Oh, okay.
So exactly what you aren't allowed to. So that's how the halacha goes. What you aren't allowed to do is actually not exactly. It's a machlokas. Do we mean ochel kima means eat anything, eat a little bit, which is what it does literally mean, and therefore any little bit would be asar, or is it you can't even have a little bit of your meal? So if you look at Tosos for example, just because you have him on the page there, you see the Tosos top right corner. He adds the word. Just Tosos says Kara Kriya Shema was Palo. You should say Kriya Shema and daven. So mikan from here mashma shemishah shegia zman Kriya Shema shel laila. Once the time to say Kriya Shema of the evening arrives, she'ein lo le'achol su'uda. Look, he put in the word su'uda. Where do you get that word from? He says you can't eat a meal out of Kriya Shema v'yispal arvis. So you see Tosos, for example, is seeing ochel kima is you can't even eat a little bit of a meal. Meaning, what's the fear? What's the fear of eating before? It's not that there's a separate isser, which we'll see eventually, the Hashem, of eating food in the morning before davening Shacharis. That's lo sochel dam, like you can't. It's a different story. This isn't that. It's like I'll summarize that. That is, it's not appropriate to like worry about your own needs before taking care of your Hashem's needs or whatever. However you want to just talk about it. That's not appropriate to be eating before davening in the morning. First thing first, you pray, then you eat. That's not this. This is something else. This is the fear. It's a durabanan that you'll end up not saying Kriya Shema, or maybe not saying Kriya Shema by chatzos. If that's the case, what's the fear? You eat some. I don't know what. You grab a Coke on the way home on your way from work to shul. What's wrong with that? Like, what's it? So Tosa says nothing will be wrong with that. The problem is that there's a fear that your Suda will begin and like stretch on, and they know how to party in those days, and they drank wine with their meals. And the next thing you know, like it never ended, and like they passed out at the tables till the morning, whatever.
But you have to say Birkat Hamazon.
Yeah, okay, so when you wake up under the table, whatever. I'm just saying the fear. Indeed, you do have to say Birkat Hamazon.
But the question is, can you daven before you say Birkat Hamazon? If you only have part of your meal.
That's a different question. If you remind me at the end, I'll get back. Like that's a side point.
Can't you, if you're in the middle of your suda and you have to go down the Maariv, you can leave and come back?
You can, but I'm like, but that's
Okay.
put that aside pocket. That's like not that's a different set of rules. Nothing to do with this per se.
Okay.
Question: Can you start eating? So Tosa says the issue is starting to eat a meal because then the meal can just drag on one thing leads to another, and next it's midnight. You'll bench at 12:01, but that's okay. But minimum 12 o'clock was Kriya Shema time.
So if you start, then you can go as long as you want.
So that's a good question. So
Like for example, on Shabbos.
right. So that's a good question. So let me first like just give the two sides in the sheet as Rishonim, and then I'll say the halacha as it comes out, the halacha l'maisa. But so you see, Tosfos doesn't take the word ochel kima literally, or like he doesn't. Yeah, ochel kima means eat a bit, but he doesn't understand grabbing a bag of potato chips, while you're learning between mincha Maariv is asar. That's not the problem. The problem is starting a suda, even a little bit of a suda, because it just one thing can lead to another. Others learn no, eat a little bit means eat a little bit. Anything the next thing that's not. You're in the decompress from a hard day mode instead of finish your load of first mode. That's no good. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah, essentially the Mishnah Berurah speaks it out that like Tosfos, that the issue is you can't start a meal, but to eat potato chips or whatever. Even born on Kabetz is his words. It's in Reish Lamed Tzif base. The Mishnah Berurah paskins you can do. So just make sure the halacha is clear. First of all, the Isser is starting the Suda within half an hour of Tzeitzis Kochavim. That's the Isser. But to eat snacky foods or something is not a problem at all. Okay? So it's not at all like the morning Isser of eating before davening, or like eating before saying Havdalah. It's something else. It's not that you have no business eating before you daven Maariv. That's not the point. We're saying Kriya Shema. It's that we're afraid, the halacha, we're afraid if you start going to dinner mode, then like you get to your bedtime routine, the next thing you know you're in bed, as has happened to all of us, and you're like, oh no, I forgot to tell Maariv. No worse film than that. So that's what the rabbi didn't want you to get into. So the halacha is, if you start your Suda beheter, meaning before, half an hour before, you can continue on. That's it. If you don't, then you have to stop. For the dorais of Kriya Shema anyways. Yeah, again, let's say it again. If you, the rabbis say within half an hour of Kriya Shema time, let's say that's 8:30, as it says, so at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., you may no longer start your Suda, and if you did start at 8:01, you must stop and say Kriya Shema when you realize you've done wrong. If you start at 7:30, it's okay, you can wait till after. If you started early, we don't assume it's going to go on Suda that never ever ended, we assume that's enough time. Yeah.
If you started at 7:30,
I'm just saying more than half an hour before Kriya Shema time. You're allowed to continue on. You don't have to stop.
but then you may forget to say.
I guess you may forget, but I guess you also may forget because your lunch might go on forever, right? I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere. So they figure if you're eating a late afternoon lunch, so to speak, instead of early dinner, that's going to be okay. And they have to draw a line somewhere. So the line is half an hour before. I mean, you're right, it could happen, but they had to draw a line somewhere, so that's why they'll draw a line at half an hour before.
It could
So
be
it's only that half-hour window that's the danger zone,
That's
right?
right.
So let's say
Danger
supposed
zone.
was at 8 o'clock, and it's Friday night. You get home from the early Shabbos minyan, and it's 7:20. Right? When you get home,
You make Kiddush.
You can make Kiddush.
That's
you can
right.
go on with your Suda. And
That's right.
You'll say Shema after your meal.
That's right. That's what everyone does in practice.
Okay.
That's what everyone
All right. But
does.
if it's within that window, then that's when you gotta wait.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Or at 7:30.
Exactly.
But
That's right.
a Friday night Suda is a long meal.
So you wait until 8.
So you have to be a responsible citizen. That's if you're starting Shabbos early. They have to draw. You can argue both, but you can say, "Oh, come on, I'm not going to." Or you can say, maybe you can argue the opposite and say, "I'll be a responsible citizen, trust me," or you can say, "You can't trust people. As soon as the clock strikes, restart, they should have to stop what they're doing." But anyways, that's what the rabbis. That's
The
how.
law is the law.
That's how the rabbis
When
came
this
out.
one Kriya Shema comes, you have to stop, stand up and say Shema in the
No, you
middle of
do
your
not need to do
Suda?
that. No, you do not need to do that.
You
If
don't?
start at Beheter. No, you do not. As far as I understand, no. If you start at Beheter. That's why I said the halacha yesterday, when this really comes up a lot, is on when you make Shabbos early, because then you're in a rush to make Kiddush quickly before you're within 30 minutes before. And I told you again, Rabbi Padowitz passing the halacha. That's 30 minutes. That 30 minutes. That seis happens 30 minutes after Shkia. So then it just so happens that 30 minutes before seis is Shkia. But just so happens, and therefore you can't make Kiddush from Shkia. Halacha. That's how we pass in the winter stuff.
So is it Kiddush that, once you make Kiddush,
Kiddush
it's
will
clear?
start, yeah.
Not washing or...
Right. I think so. Yes. Kiddush is starting the meal first. Yeah. Now, because Kiddush so that's the beginning. So that's the dinner. Two questions came up right after shiur. We were rushed, right? And then two very good questions came up after shiur, which I'd like to address. One of them, because that's someone's not here right now. Oh no! But first of all, Moshe asked a question. Moshe asked a question. Stengel said that. Okay, this is a good question. I want to discuss it because it sort of speaks about my policy in terms of the tack I take in terms of teaching the Gemorah. So my policy is that I teach the Gemorah according to Rashi, and then I speak out like more. Like as I'm going according to Rashi, that's the assumption. If he doesn't say something, then I'll say, oh, when the Ritva says not, or sometimes I say Rashi is problematic, and I'll say this Shabbat, I'll say, oh, Tosa argues, whatever the story is. So Rashi actually learns this. I gave you two main ways to learn this L'Divreihem. Understanding either means as soon as possible. There was a siyag of midnight, and there's a second fence of as soon as possible, or don't eat before. That's the two pshatim I explained. Because those reflect themselves in halacha. The halacha, there's a lachachila you should say right away, and there's an isser of starting your suda within half an hour of Kriya Shema time. Now, Rashi is a very famous shita. He speaks it out in the very first Amud on Beis Amud Aleph, which I didn't really emphasize because I didn't want to get distracted by it. Rashi speaks almost uncharacteristically and says, "Hey, wait a second. Back on the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says you have to Kriya Shema until 3 stars come out. So Rashi says, wait a second. I've been going to shul all my life, and everyone's davening Maariv before 3 stars come out. Like starts to get dark, they go to shul, they got mincha Maariv, and they come home, and by the time 3 stars, right, everyone's eating dinner. So like, what are you telling me, Maariv is you're not yotzi Kriya Shema till 3 stars? Everyone says Kriya Shema before 3 stars. So Rashi says, oh, that's because they're davening with a minion, and it's convenient, and it's dangerous in the dark, whatever the story is, and they won't be yotzi Kriya Shema then. But when they say Kriya Shema Tamita, when they go to bed at night, they'll say Kriya Shema, and they'll be yotzi the mitzvah doraisa Kriya Shema, because then the stars are out. Okay. And it opens its own can of worms, because what do you say in Kriya Shema Tamita? You're not really saying all the parshas. And I don't against that. I never want to get into then, I don't want to get into it now. But what I do want to speak out, because Moshe asked it, is according to Rashi, according to that, Rashi must be learning this, can't be learned like how I described, neither like Rav Hai or like Rav or like the Rajba. In other words, the two possibilities I suggested was either the second Rabbanan was say Kriya Shema right away, or don't eat till you say Kriya Shema. But Rashi is saying, you'll say Kriya Shema on your bed, obviously not right away, and not till after dinner. So Rashi has to learn a third way. I just brush on the carpet because there's always a zillion sheets floating. And Rashi isn't on the Amud. If Rashi was spoken out over here, I would have said not like Rashi. But Rashi, you have to sort of think it through that Rashi's not squaring away with this. So I just let it slide. So I try to make things seem simple. But anyways, Moshe asked the question yesterday. So I answered Taka that Rashi wouldn't learn like we learned up to now. Rashi had to learn that it's I guess speculative what Rashi would learn. But Rashi certainly wouldn't hold that the siyag that they made is a second siyag of having to not eat or having to say it right away. He wouldn't hold that. He'd have to say something more generic. I don't know how Rashi would square away the words with Divrei. Not exactly clear to me. Okay? But anyways, that's a good question. And a good point. The other question, right as we ended, I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Don.
Oh, Don. Okay, Don. What's your surname?
Weinrich.
Okay, so Don asked a question right after everyone left, which is, I thought you could tell someone to remind you to say Kriya Shema and then you'd be okay, or Dav Maariv and then you'd be okay. Because I mentioned about weddings. To see people. So I'm going to discuss that for just a moment, because it's a good point that we discussed yesterday. There is a din, you are allowed to appoint a shomer to remind you. That means I could tell my roommate, I'm going to a wedding now, can you please, and I'm going to wash in that window of time, whatever it is. So when I get home, I'm counting you to remind me to say to Dav Maariv, say Kriya Shema, and then that is yes permitted. But there's a big but here. The but is the person who you're asking to be your shomer can't be someone who also was like with you and even say Kriya Shema. That's someone who's separate, like your roommate back home, not the guy sitting in the meal with you at the wedding, because he also might get dragged on his meal forever and so on. So in practice, relatively difficult. Not difficult, but relatively difficult. You can't just turn to the guy next to you and say, remind me to say Kriya Shema, and that's not going to cut it. You have to sort of prearrange or whatever it is, with your wife or something. So that's that. There's a discussion in the poskim, about what's with alarm clocks, like setting your phone or your alarm, whatever it is. Now I think all the new smartphones, you can tell, like when I leave this spot, then I want you to remind me and so on. So that's a discussion in the poskim. Shlomo Zalman says it's fine. It's going to remind us to be okay. He even speaks out the same way that you could have told your shomer, I'm in the middle of something, remind me in 10 minutes. You could push snooze on the alarm clock. That'd also be okay, says he. This is Shlomo Zalman. But of course, you have to react right away. That's an important tonight. Go to shomer. And Rabbi Yashav said no. Shomer is a human being and has teeth or whatever the story is, and you never see a shomer being a passive an animal object, and it would not be good enough. So there's Machlokas. Rav Yitzhak Berkowitz, was my Rosh Kol, he said you could rely on Shlomo Zalman. So you could set the alarm clock on your phone as long as you react to it or whatever it is, and that would be an okay shomer to remind you. So that would be your plan. There are other alternatives too, by the way. For example, let's say you always daven at 10 o'clock Maariv, that's your Seder Yom. So today you happen to, whatever it is, that's I always daven. I always eat dinner. I come home from work, I eat dinner around, year round, whether it's, sunny or not sunny, depending on the season. But at 10 o'clock, after I eat, I go to learn for an hour and I daven at 10 o'clock. If you have a minyan kavua, then an extra Seder, then the assumption is you won't forget, and that becomes mutter again. So that could be a relevant thing also. It's not so simple on Shabbos, because on Shabbos, probably not just Seder, so it's more complicated, hence the problems. I get a big kick out of the fact that here in dailyTefilah, in the summertime, when early Shabbos happens, of course, throughout Sfiras Omer, they make a 9 o'clock minyan. which is great.
How is that allowed?
So how's that allowed? Because
Well-
everyone's washing before Shkia, before half an hour before Seis, so you're allowed to wash and start a Suda, and so you'll have to remind yourself to say Kriya Shema afterwards, but you'll have to say it b'yachidas if you're going to daven, like when you're going to daven. Oh, so I'm sorry. So what happens, like the early minyan mode, is that people daven Mincha, Kolat Shabbat when it's broad daylight, and Maariv when it's still broad daylight, and go home when it's still broad daylight, which I hate, and then you walk home in the light and you make Kiddush as if it's Shabbos and the sun is in the sky. It always feels very funny to me, I hate that. But I've relented because my wife insists with the kids. Well,
Right.
anyways, so that's that. So, in any case, so that's going to be okay as long as you make Kiddush before the sun goes down, 30 minutes before. In daven Maariv in broad daylight, and you're relying on, we'll get to review the Shita. You're allowed to daven Maariv from Plag and Mincha, whatever those words mean. It doesn't matter. There's a halachic basis for it, and that's okay. We'll get to it. But then there's still the problem during Sfiras HaOmer of Sfiras HaOmer, because you can't say Sfiras HaOmer early because you're counting days and the day hasn't changed yet. So you say Sfiras HaOmer v'yachidus, like Kriya Shema v'yachidus later on. It's not l'chachila, so dailyTefilah has said, well listen, everyone can daven Mincha and Kabbalat Shabbat, then go home, forget Maariv, go home, eat your dinner in broad daylight, and then come back at 9 o'clock and daven a regular Maariv and say Kriya Shema properly in the proper time, with the brachas, and you could say Sfiras HaOmer in the proper time, and everyone will be happy. And that's what they do here the whole summer long, those 7 weeks at least. They make it 9 o'clock minyan, which is felt like, even though I never go to it early, because I hate making early Shabbos, I hate it. But it's great that they have it for when you do it. Yes, that was that. Good. Okay, so now we're still in the Brisa, but we're moving on from the. Yeah, good. So we're still in the Brisa. The Brisa ended up, the last words said, and we're in line 12. V'chola over al divrei chachamim, whoever doesn't listen to the rabbis, chayv misa, he deserves to die, something like that. End of Brisa. So the Gemorah now picks up, like.
That means he's not saying Shema.
It's the generic. All the words say here is whoever ignores the rabbis is liable to death penalty. Now, it's not clear exactly the rabbis in what regard. We're talking about perhaps. I don't know if anyone says this, but I'll speak that to you. Theoretically, maybe it's talking about the chatzos issue, maybe it's talking about the eating issue, maybe it's saying the right away issue, maybe it's talking about davening Maariv, maybe it's talking about, I don't know, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of possibilities. But the Gemorah itself picks up with whoa, why are you getting so chayav misa? That seems a little heavy. Ma'ishna b'chol duchta, how come everywhere else in the Shas, the lo katani chayav misa, you never mention this death penalty business. But here, all of a sudden, you get off the began, the katani chayav misa. You mentioned the chiyav misa. So the chiyav misa would be, there's elsewhere we say ufrotz geder, one who it's a pasuk from Koheles, the guy who breaks the fences down. Sheken nachash, the snakes are going to bite him. That is understood as that the rabbis put fences around things. That's the siyag. The guys who breach the fence, have it coming to them. The snakes will get them. So that's the thinking here. But the Gemorah answers, why we have to mention it here. It's such heavy duty things. Iboy Sema, reason number one is Mishum Deika Oneshena. We're dealing with them there's no stronger, force fighting with you than your desire to go to sleep at night. And it's just inevitable. It's inevitable that literally Oneshena means the inevitability of falling asleep. That's a loose translation, right? That sleep will force you. In other words, it's inevitable we've all been there, that if you don't daven right away, then you're tired at night, and the next one leads to another, you end up falling asleep. So since this is such a predictable, obvious, gargantuan force that you're fighting against, the rabbi said no way, you better daven Maariv first, and that's that. So and under threat, they pulled out the threat of, if you don't, you're a really dead boy, since you're obviously playing with fire, you're going to miss Kriya Shema, so therefore chayav misa, you're on the hook for misa. I don't know why. I'm just speaking in the air here. I would have said a different answer. which I didn't. There must be a good reason why it doesn't say this. I just don't know what the reason is, but I would like to know the reason why. If someone has an answer, please tell me. I would like the Gemorah to have said, well, what do you mean every other place? We're on Daf Dalet of Brachos. We haven't mentioned any Durabanans until now. Now we're talking about the first time we get the Durabanans out, so that's where it said it. It may be. I'll answer my question, and if somebody like it. It may be that we're talking about something more general. This brisa existed long before they edited the Shas, and maybe there's talking about why is the brisa talk about it when other brisas don't talk about it. That's probably the answer. But in the context of our Gemorah, it seems very strange to me because the Gemorahs like bring up the points, like why are we making such a ma'aseh b'chol duchta like everywhere else? You never said it, and I don't know. It seems a little strange to me. But anyway, it's not that strange. Maybe the answer is like what I said. That do you hear my question? You hear my I'll say it clearly. My question is, what is the Gemorah war about? This is different in other places. This is the first time we're mentioning their abundance. That's why we're bringing it as emphasizing it. It doesn't say that. I don't know why. I'm suggesting the possible answer, which is we're addressing a brisa which exists outside the context of the beginning of brachos, and we're asking about wherever the brisa is in the luft. Every other brisa doesn't have that nasty epithet at the end of it, but this one does. So why? Maybe, but it doesn't. Okay. Anyway, that's that. In any case, the Gemorah answers. First answer was the reason why we're emphasizing Chayav Misa is because falling asleep is such a powerful force. Alternatively, the reason why the Brisa mentions the Chayav Misa, if you ignore the rabbis, is Lafukim Imanda Amar. It's coming in like contradistinction to, like Lafukim means like in opposition to, something like that. To remember the word nafak, to take out. So that's like it's to like
It says exclude.
Exclude? Yeah, it's militating against. It's like fighting with this. In other words, let me say it outside first because it's a term of art and it's hard to translate exactly. There's a machlokas, a massive machlokas, which is like a very contentious issue. You'll see this issue is very contentious. It comes up in some stories in Brachos. Whether or not the Kriya Shema, whether or not Maariv is obligatory or is voluntary. If it's a chiyav or rishos. It's like, for some reason it was a very divisive issue. I don't know why it was such a divisive issue, but it was. Maariv, remember we'll see later the origin of the tefilos, but the simple understanding is that Shachris is in the place of, or parallels, or both, the Tamid Shel Shachar, Mincha Tamid Shel Ben Harbaim, the two Tamidim, and the Maariv is like the burning of the fats afterwards, which is like not, so there's certainly a chiyuv for Shachris and Mincha, but there's a question of if like that Maariv is a chiyuv versus Davi Maariv is a chiyuv or just voluntary nature. So it seems, because it was such a contentious issue, this Tana is putting his foot down and saying, I'm demanding that, so to speak, that you daven Maariv, and if you ignore me and go with those other opinions, then you're like Chayav Misa, like throwing like heavy weight behind it. Okay, which would mean just speak this point of logic out there, that when it says v'chol overall divrei chachamim, the divrei chachamim we're talking about is not Kriya Shema, and not midnight, and not eating, and not saying it first. It's like a new point. The PS of the Brisa is, and by the way, if you don't daven Maariv, in general, then you're a bad guy, Chayav Misa. Nothing to do with Kriya Shema at all. But that's second answer. So here's what it's a good insight. Vibo Esema. Alternatively, I'll tell you the reason why we stuck it with this, we brought out this Chayav Misa business, which is unusual, is Lafukim Amanda Amar, to exclude literally, but it means like to militate against the opinion that says Tfilas Arvis Rishus, that saying Maariv is a voluntary situation. Kamash Milan learned from the Brisa that it's the chova, that it's obligatory, that you must, like Shachas Mincha, you must have Maariv. La halacha, by the way, we do not pass like this. We pass that technically, this is like hear the whole thought out for a sentence. We don't pass it to the Brisa, meaning that really the halacha is that Maariv is just a rishus. It's just that everyone accepted upon themselves like a minhag, which now becomes binding. But it's not binding with the same authority and the same nature as Shachas and Mincha. It's binding because we took on to do it that way, but not that it's like one of the three things we have to do during the day. It's different. Like for example, the obvious illustration of this is that we don't have chazaros hashatz in Maariv. It's not really obligatory. It's just rishus, but it's rishus that like we've accepted to become like.
But it may not be stronger than just a
Okay,
minhag.
Okay, so that's why I'm not. There's no reason. There's no halachic basis upon which not to say Maariv. But the basis that demands you say Maariv is not the same basis that says Shachas and Mincha. That's you have to be London, right? There's a different source to this din. Okay, different source to this din. That's how the halacha comes out. And I guess that would have really irritated this Tana, who really felt like, no, it's the exact same. And if you listen to me, you're Chayv Nisan. Strong words. Okay, that's how it is. Good. I'll take questions and then we're moving on from this. Yeah? Okay, good.
Who is this Tana? Do you know?
Don't know. Presumably it's like unknown. Oh, I think the rule is it will say Amar of so and so if it's so it's lost. Okay. So now we are holding on line 17, two dots, and we're having Amar Mar. So I mentioned that the base Amar Mar was used very unusually, referencing the Mishnah, but here Amar Mar is used in a normal way. Amar Mar means like, oh yeah, by the way, in the course of discussion about whatever we're discussing, you mentioned something I want to pick up now. So we're Amar Mar is like the code word for it. We're going to go off topic because I want to discuss something you said. That's like off topic. So along the way, if you look back on line 11, we had said the order of, and that, by the way, the same way like I told you yesterday about the arrows, I did that also today in my Gemorah. I have an arrow pointing up on line 17 and an arrow pointing like in, if you will, on line 11, so I could see where the Amar Mar is. In any case, Amar Mar, it was said before by the master, meaning the person in the Brisa, that correct Kriya Shema is palal. That the way you do things is you say Kriya Shema and then you daven Maariv, right? That was line 11. It said line 11 said that's what you do. The person should correct Kriya Shema, mispalel, then ochel pito, and mavarach, etc. So it turns out that point that you should say Kriya Shema before Maariv is a machlokas. So I'm going to say it outside for a second verse just because I think I can point to it on that one less confusing. It's not complicated. It's just
Kriya Shema before Maariv, meaning not to say Kriya Shema, then say Maariv with Shema, and then...
Let me draw the board. The reason I'm drawing on the board, I find, my experience says that when there's a machlokas and one of the two among the Amrim is something which is totally not what we're used to, it's hard to get in. Like we're used to, everyone knows you say Kriya Shema and then you daven Shemona Esrei. But that's a machlokas. So since it's a machlokas, I want to illustrate. There's two people that agrees to that. So we're going to have here. I'm going to go this way. We're going in Hebrew. So in Rabbi Yochanan's world, here's how it works. You say Kriya Shema, you daven Shachris, like Shema, Shachris, Mincha, and then you're going to say Kriya Shema. Then you can daven Maariv. If I color coded this, we probably should have done color code. He says it's Kriya Shema, Shachas Mincha. Sorry, I'm really into that. Sorry. Mincha. Kriya Shema. And Maariv. And when I say Mincha and Maariv, what I mean, of course, is the Shemona Esrei of the Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei and Shemona Esrei. Okay, so okay, that's how the daily liturgy goes, which is what you're used to, obviously, right? Kriya Shema and Shachar Shemona Esrei, Mincha without a Kriya Shema. So now, with Yeshua and Levi, I'm sure the colors, I've always penned in no colors. But anyways, Rabbi Yeshua and Levi, he says, oh no, that's not how it works at all. Yeah, he says it's Kriya Shema. That, like bookends. Your day is book, so to speak, they're bookends. Is bookended by saying Kriya Shema. And then in the middle of the day, you have Shacharis, Mincha, and Maariv, 4a-b. So the Machlokes is over here. Okay? Where Bishul Levi's thinking is, your day is like bracketed by saying Kriya Shema when you get up in the morning and you say go to bed at night, and you have 3 tefillahs in the middle of the day. And Rabbi Yochanan's shita is like what we're used to, which is no, Shacharis has a Kriya Shema with it because of Uvukumecha. Kriya Shema at night is the Shacharis, part of Maariv, and it precedes the Shemona Esrei. So this is the Machlokes over here. Good. So in other words, so now we had said in passing in the Brisa, oh, you should say Kriya Shema and mitpalel, and then go eat your bread. So that's the Brisa is supporting Rabbi Yochanan, right? It's like Rabbi Yochanan. So that's all that we're saying so far. Again, we're on line. We're let's say line 17.
So according to Rabbi Yehoshua, you say Maariv before Seitz?
No, it could be afterwards. That's not the point here. The point is like in your siddur, to so to speak, say Shemona Esrei after it says even, and then say Kriya Shema afterwards. Like the first, so to speak, the siddur. This is how the daily prayer book opens up. Kriya Shema at the beginning, ignoring the other things, but Kriya Shema at the beginning and the Kriya Shema at the end. That's like how you when you go to bed, like your last move at night conceptually is Kriya Shema. First move in the morning conceptually is Kriya Shema. Ignore Modani, blah blah blah. And the 3 davenings in the middle of the day, in the middle, in the middle. So it's sort of bracketed or bookended by Kriya Shema. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Do what we do." So that was a point of that was a machlokas. So we're discussing that machlokas that don't exist out there.
Bad Kriya Shema Shomita.
There's no Kriya Shema Minchatan.
Mita.
That's something else. We'll actually ironically get to it at the bottom of this Amud, but it's like its own separate shmir. It has nothing to do with like ironically the L'shach b'cha, you're lying down in Kriya Shema is not literally as you get into bed. It's at bedtime.
Right.
So the idea of smichos gula tefilah is that
We're headed that way. We're headed that way. But so that will be intertwined here. We'll touch on it here actually. There's a bigger circle later on. But anyways, we'll touch on it right here. So again, so we're on line 17. Amar Mar. So the Bryce that said Kriya Shema mispalel. First say Kriya Shema and then you daven. So that's misayeh, that lends support to Rabbi Yochanan, to Rabbi Yochanan Shita, so you have on the board already. Rabbi Yochanan, Ezu ben Haba, who is a guy who's like going to for sure get to heaven, whatever, how to translate that. So it's Zeh HaSomach Gula tefilat shel arvit. It's the guy who puts his mention of Geula, of redemption, samuch, like juxtapose it, abuts it to his saying of Maariv. So what is that like? What's happening here? I guess I should. Do me a favor. Can I? That must. Right. Good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You reject.
Thank you very much. I didn't really know what's happening. Okay. So, thank you. So what happens is there's in Shacharis, right before you go into Shemona Esrei, what do you say? The last thing you say is
Gal
Gal
Yisrael.
Yisrael, right? Gal Yisrael. Okay, so that's a mention. That's the bracha, right? It's a mention of Geula. And right after you say Gal Yisrael, then you should say Hashem Tzvaytatach. You like launch straight from Geula, the mention of Geula in that bracha, the bracha of Geula, into Shacharis. And at the same now goes over here. In Maariv time, we actually have 2 brachas. We say the first one ends Gal Yisrael. The truth is, we'll come back to this problem. But then you actually have one more, the Hashkiveinu bracha, Shmer Yisrael Lahad. I'm going to call it Hashkiveinu only because that's what's referenced in the Gemorah. Okay, so it's Hashkiveinu. Okay, so oh my gosh, it's called Gal with an ayin. Oh, terrible. Worse than I can say because never mind. Yeah, it's terrible. Okay, anyways, so anyways, let's forget that. So,
It's funny.
how embarrassing. So anyways, so you say Kriya Shema, then you say mention Geula, right before you go into Shemona Esrei, and again, Kriya Shema, mention Geula, Hashkaveno, whatever the problem is, we'll discuss it, and then launch into Shemona Esrei again. So, Rabbi Yochanan is saying, his shita was, because he didn't say explicitly this, he was just, his explicit words were, who's the Ben Olam Haba? He's the guy who mentions Gal Yisrael before Shemona Esrei. He's Somech Geula Tefilah. So if you're going to say Kriya Shema afterwards, so then the brachas of Kriya Shema would be, this is like a part of Kriya Shema, and they're not even agreeing, you would say Gal Yisrael presumably over here. And it wouldn't be, meaning Somech wouldn't be juxtaposing and abutting your Gal Yisrael to your Shemona Esrei. It would be being Somech Geula Tefilah. So Rabbi Yochanan said, the guy who is a Ben Al-Haba is a guy who is Somech Geula to Tefilah, which must mean Kriya Shema precedes Tefilah, Shemona Esrei. And therefore, when our Baraisa above had said, he should say Kriya Shema and then mitpalel, that is a support, his shita, that you are Somech Geula Tefilah at night. Okay? Rabbi Yeshua Levi is about to say, no, that's not necessary. There's no reason to be Somech Geula Tefilah at night. We'll discuss more in a second.
Please say the first part again.
So we're...
What happened to that?
Ignore that. We'll come back to it. It's
This is Rabbi Yochanan saying.
for the minute, Hashkaveno's there, we'll be Pasha. But the short, just to get follow the main tack, we'll come back to that, is Rav Yochanan said the proper thing to do is to be Somech Geula Tefilah, to mention Gal Yisrael, the Geula, immediately prior to your praying. And Rabbi Yeshua Levi says you do not need to do that. There's no issue of being Somech Geula to Tefilah. So we're saying, well, if that's all they said. Rabbi Yochanan could marshal a proof that he's right from the Brisa, Misayele, because the Brisa says that you say Kriya Shema and you pray. Well, if you say Kriya Shema and praying, it's going to work this way, not that way. We would, the only way you'd be able to say the Brachot Kriya Shema of Gal Yisrael prior to Maariv is if you say Kriya Shema first, then Maariv. So that the Brisa, which stipulates this order of things, supports Rabbi Yochanan's contention that you must say that you should say Gal Yisrael prior to Shemona Esrei. Okay? Rabbi Yeshua Levi says that's not necessary because then you'll have to bookend the day with Kriya Shema. So, inside again. Misayele, I'm back on line 18. So Misayele, our Brisa, which says you say Kriya Shema and you pray, supports Rabbi Yochanan, Dam Rabbi Yochanan, Eizu Ben Olam Haba, Zeh Somech Geula Tefilah, Shel Arvis, one who is Somech Geula Tefilah even in the nighttime. Rabbi Shimon Levi says no. Tefilos be'emtze tiknum, the rabbis, were established, takana, they established the tefilos to be in the emtza, like how I did it in the middle of the day, so to speak, and the Kriya Shema bookend on either side, they'd be in the middle of the two Kriya Shemas. So, period. Like, digest that. That should make sense to you before we move on. So, because let me speak out, but it's not so obvious in terms of if you look at it at first blush. Or Rabbi Yochanan said it's Somech Geula Tefilah. He's not mentioning the order of things. But the implication of a Brisa is that the order of things must be Kriya Shema first and Maariv and Shemona Esrei and Maariv second. So, Rabbi Shimon Levi and Rabbi Yochanan is machlokas, but what are they arguing about? Like, why are they arguing? What's the point of the machlokas? But my commitfully, what is it? What's the point of contention? Ibo Esema, you could say like two things. So either alternative A, Kra, they're arguing over an interpretation of a verse. Ibo Esema, Svara. You could say they're arguing over a Svara, like a logical inference. Ibo Esema Svara, what would be the logical thinking, line of reasoning? Rav Yochanan Savar, Gula Me'orta Nami Havi. That back in Egypt, when did Paro say, okay, get out of here? At midnight. So the Gula, so to speak, the nascent Gula begins at midnight. The fact that we didn't actually walk out of Mitzrayim until the morning, because we said we're not leaving like robbers in the nighttime, we'll go when we feel like it. And the actual Lamaisa walking out happened in the morning, but so what? Like they were free to go, so to speak, and the Gula process had begun at night. And therefore there's some level of Gula at nighttime also. Ela Gula Ma Yasalohavi. It just wasn't the full-blown Gula, but it was the secondary Gula. Right? And that did, the full-blown Gula Malayasa, the full-blown Gula, didn't happen Elad Safra until the next morning. But the nighttime was something. And Rabbi Shimon Levi says, no, he's Savar, this is as far as he holds, Kivan de Lo Havi Elad Safra, since they didn't get out till the morning anyways, Lo Havi Gula Malayasa. like, it's a nothing. The nighttime thing is nothing. The nighttime, the fact that they could have left, they didn't leave, so Gula didn't happen until the morning. There's no issue of Gula at night, and therefore there's no reason in the world to mention Gula at night. Not relevant. That's one reason to explain the machlokas, what the nature of the of Gula is in terms of the night part of the Gula. People are saying Makra. Alternatively, they're arguing over just how to understand Pesukim. Ushneim Mikra Echad Darshu. Their understanding of the pasuk is based on the drasha, the same drasha. Tichsiv, because the verse says B'shachbacha uvukumecha, and you're lying down and you're getting up. So there's a hekesh there that we assume that the dinam applies similarly. So if the dinam applies similarly between shchiv and kima, between night and morning, in terms of Kriya Shema, so Rabbi Yochanan Savar, Rabbi Yochanan says, listen, ma kishchiva lakima, you just connect the rules of lying down to getting up. Ma kima Kriya Shema v'achach tefilah, just like we find that in the morning time it's Kriya Shema first and Shemona Esrei second. Av shchiva also in the evening, nami Kriya Shema, first comes Kriya Shema, v'achach tefilah. It's just the same thing. And Rabbi Yoshua Malevi says, well, you're right, but you're wrong. Of course, you're right that the dinim are the same, but the din that you're focused on is wrong. The point is, it's Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Savar ma kishchiva lakima, yeah, you're connecting shchiva to kima, but ma kima Kriya Shema samach l'mitaso, the same way, so to speak, get up in the morning and say Kriya Shema implies like, close to bedtime, so to speak, the first thing you do. Av shchiva, the nighttime Kriya Shema, when it says b'shach b'cha and you're lying down, nami Kriya Shema samach l'mitaso, it should be like kind of the last thing you do at night. Conceptually, the beginning and the end. Literally, it means close to your bed. First and last. Period. I guess I'll have to stop there. But so that's the end of that thought. So that it's almost like that. We don't go any further from there. We basically say there's a machlokas, and our rights would support Rabbi Yochanan. That's that. The halacha is indeed that we do say Kriya Shema. Sorry, we are somach geula the tefilat at night. Also, in case you didn't notice, we do say it of course before, like Rabbi Yochanan. However, it's not the same chiyuv at all. Meaning, the halacha, if you show up at Shachris and this is your last minyan for the day, you're gonna have to make the choice between some gula tefilah and Shachris, and Shachris is the minyan. Meaning, you get there and they're about to go into Shemona Esrei. So if you join up with them now, you won't be able to say the bracha until afterwards. But if you don't, then you'll miss time with the minyan. In Shachris, the halacha is so then too bad. You have to be some gula tefilah. You'll have to daven b'yechidus today. Whereas in Maariv, since it's a watered down connection, if you will, the halacha is you should daven with a minyan and then say the brachas of Kriya Shema afterwards. So